Hello, everybody. Well, welcome, everybody. Oopsies. All right, there was a brief echo. I should have fixed it. But hi, everyone. Welcome to the Roll20 Community Roundtable of March 26th. We are starting today. We had a pinch hit today. So Carlos Luna, our content producer, is going to be joining us. We're super happy to have you here. Hi, Carlos.
Hey, what's going on? Glad to be here.
Yeah. So just remember that this is Carlos. We were going to have Stephanie Bryant, our Scrum Master, join
It does say Carlos's name now. I don't know how that.
It says my name on
As
it.
this goes on.
It won't.
Yeah.
Oh, as it goes on. Okay.
So
Yeah.
Gotcha.
we did this nice thing where we had this whole Q&A set up. So we got all these questions that people wrote in.
And you flip the overlays. Yes.
The whole overlay as opposed to part of the overlay. And so soon,
It's okay.
Carlos, you will ascend into form.
Yeah, it's it's the next form. My next Pokemon form is a Stephanie. So yeah.
I always knew that.
Yeah.
Scrum Master is no longer on my team, so I will miss you, but I'm proud of you for evolving. Right. Well, going back to names that we have up now. Hi, I'm Soraya Een Hajji, the brand manager of Roll20. As Nolan referenced before, we took a bunch of questions from people on the forums in advance, and we're also going to be taking some questions from chat because this is going to be an interactive talk. But we're here to answer your questions and talk about what's coming up for Roll20. Can we go around and introduce ourselves? Nolan next.
Nolan T. Jones. I'm the managing partner and one of the co-founders of Roll20.
Cool. And Dean?
Hey, I'm Dean. I'm the head of licensing at Roll20.
Oh, yeah, I've got to update your title.
I know. It doesn't say head in there. I have a head.
You do have a head. Well, at least...
I'm just a manager on a neck.
At least you're keeping Carlos company so that he won't be the only person whose labeling is wrong.
Yeah.
And so how about you, Steph? I mean, Carlos.
Yeah, Steph Carlos. Steph-los. Hey,
That
my
does
name
sound
is
like a
Carlos
Pokemon.
Luna. I am the content producer here at Roll20.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start us off with some questions from the forum. Those of you who are watching us in chat, if you want to drop some questions there, I'll be tracking there as well. And we'll occasionally take a moment and answer some of those. But for starters, let's go to here. So with the introduction of Bring Your Own Beat and animations to Roll20, are there any plans to increase the maximum asset upload size? Nolan, I'm going to throw that one at you. No? I can do it.
I recognize I muted myself. I was typing, and so I was trying to not be that. I have one of those terrible mechanical keyboards that can make this an awful sound. I think both. So the two questions that we've got up are related to storage size. One from what is it? Hikari? I'm sorry. Person's name, handle, and Anonymous are both inquiring about storage space and what's happening there. And I would say on the asset upload end, we're trying to figure out what would be workable there in the future. We don't have an increased amount yet, in large part because performance is kind of an element that we've got to get figured out in terms of what if when it comes to things like animations and GIFs and stuff like that, we can literally have people uploading entire movies as GIFs. And so what is the form that we're going to take on that if we go larger? Yeah. As far as
we did increase it a little, right? Just to check for music files, I think you can upload up to 20 megabytes.
Yeah, there was an increase, I believe, with the My Audio Shotgun update. Mm-hmm. But as far as the Oh No, Fanburst is closing update, but there's still, I think, a desire for us to allow more in a single upload, and it's nothing that we've got figured yet. On the other side of that, the further question is storage for free users. And that's something that we've thrown this around that we found that it's less than 1% of free users use more than 25% of their existing space in Roll20. That said, I think keeping track in terms of what the use is in the future with this change, that people are going to have to upload their own audio is something that we're committed to doing. And then beyond that, we're also working, we've got some additions to an audio library that we're working on right now, and hope to have some out-of-the-box things so that would not have any impact on storage for folks in the future. That way, it really does, there's no other way to say it than it's a bummer that just like the free asset that's been sitting there is no longer, because an outside company couldn't do that anymore. At the same time, I look at something like that and go, we've seen 2 different outside sound services change their terms and what's going on. And there's a reason for that.
With my knowledge of the future, we do have a question coming up that relates to other things that we're providing for audio stuff. But for this one, I think the short answer is that we are keeping an eye on how much users are going through their storage space. And so far, even after the audio change, we haven't really seen an increase for most users across the board. It's still less than 1% using.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see over time if there's any change in that. Well, and even too, something that we're doing is something that I've seen people raise in terms of a question for that is like, how is that for people who are game masters versus people who are players? And that's something that we're additionally running data sets on to try to see what the variance is going to be going forward for this change.
Yeah, just a lot of refining data that we're looking at, a lot of seeing who's doing what, a lot of seeing, which section of those free users, like how active they are. Those are all elements that we're honing in on the data as we watch as this goes, and they're pretty regular conversations.
Yeah,
but at this point, I still feel comfortable with where we're at.
Yeah. All right. So let me move along to the next set of questions.
Stephanie Bryant.
Yeah, Stephanie, when will Volo's guide be added to the character?
Oh yeah.
No, I'm not gonna actually do that to you.
Yeah, that would be a total ambush.
Are you prepared to answer all the licensing questions?
Yeah. Are you prepared for this, Carlos? Oh, okay.
I don't see it, Carlos. You're only a Stephanie.
Yeah.
But Dean, we have a couple of licensing questions here. When will Volo's guide and Mordenkainen's be added to the Character Mancer? Asked by David Lascelle for a start.
Great. Though every D&D product that has features in it that can be added to our current feature set, such as Character Mancer and other forms of compendium features, those will be added. And we are currently working on the first round of updates for products on that. And to keep in mind, there's a few reasons why this takes a little bit. The first being we just have this new feature for leveling up. So we've still been giving it some time to test it, make sure there's no problems. We don't want to keep adding more product to a feature that may or may not be functioning right. So now that we're confident it's functioning right and have cleared up any lingering issues and bugs that we find to be any kind of blocker with moving forward, we are currently in production on that. There's a few things and features we need to add and new data points we need to add into these products in order to make sure they work properly. So the rollout will be a bit staggered, but they're currently in the works. We're not giving dates yet just because of production and dev timelines and potential blockers, but the first round is coming soon-ish, I would say month or two-ish.
Yeah. And
oh no, you put a timeline.
But I did this. Okay. With my
it's spreading the paint over. I mean, it's over here and it's over here. I'm committed. It's all over.
Soon, TM.
Yeah. Well, And we do have Carlos working on some video content related to that, I think.
And I think all things within the licensing realm too, there's always the caveat of we get to make a lot of the decision, but not all of the decision ourselves. And so in that regard, as we get closer to finish lines on that, there are occasionally delays as our partners with any licensed product in terms of their getting to have a stamp of approval on what crazy things we're doing with their IP.
Yeah.
So I work in the one department that every other department and company can block me at some point.
It's fun.
And will.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a lot of enthusiasm in chat. A couple of people talking about how they would love to play Out of the Abyss if it came out on Roll20. So Dean Polonius7 wants to know if there are any plans for Out of the Abyss.
Yes, there are plans.
Yes.
We have,
and then we spread that paint.
You don't say anything else.
They'd be good on a red carpet. Right? They'd be good on a red carpet.
So this is something we want to do for a while. A lot of our schedule is also dictated by how many new products are coming out. We obviously want to support new products. How many back products can we shove down the production team's throat while they're working on new and old products for multiple companies at once? So Out of the Abyss is on my 2019 plan.
I like it.
It is currently in that I have some dates for it, but it could be shifted. So I'm not even going to say with the month estimate.
I'm not going to do the thing.
But it's in my 2019 licensing plan, which has been conveyed to many people. So I feel like it must happen.
That's a Jackson Pollock of spreading paint. Hopefully we get it out before Thorson starts their campaign. David Lascelle, I think you might have popped in right after we answered your question, but yes, the Volo races are going to be added to the character Mancer soon, hand wavy. And then one more question from Gavin, and then I'm going to take some questions from chat. Are there any plans of adding the list of D&D 5e feats to each content pack accordingly so we can use them with the compendium?
So this is
there's a lot to that.
Seems your call.
I'd like to do everything. I don't really have an answer at the moment for that. If that's okay, unless you want to answer. And then...
Well, yeah, this is so one of the reasons that we kind of that we took questions in advance is so that we could sit down and do some interdepartmental jamming on some of these things. And this was something that came back with a few elements to it. One, the fact that feats they vary wildly, right? So some of them are literally just text for a thing that you need to remember about your character during play. Others are actual mechanical changes that work in combat or in role play. And so there's a bunch that has to be done here. Like updating the character sheet is one part of that. And making that functional within that realm. The thing is, like, how do you handle feats that don't change the sheet currently by adding the attribute to traits? It prescripted. We don't change the sheet because if a fate changes the sheet and you remove the feat, we don't know how to change the sheet back. Like it becomes a mess of, is this real data or not data with feats? Mm-hmm. So what we're doing right now is we're trying to figure out how to organize that and automate that process later for feats. So that's the reason that it hasn't happened fully yet, is because some feats are not math. Some feats are not like functional things that would go in the same place. Or I guess would interact with the rest of your sheet properly.
It's one of those fun intersections of what is easy for a human brain to comprehend and manage might not necessarily be easy for a computer to comprehend and manage.
I would say beyond that, if you're looking for some more insight in this, we did an interview with Wing It, who did the development on the most recent round. It has been leading the charge on all things Character Mancer. And he has an interesting conversation about, like, you think you found all the iterations of a rule and then.
Right.
And feats really do fall underneath that. It's something that we are continuing to tackle. The problem is that there is sadly not a simple programmatic one-size-fits-all fix for Feats.
Yeah, and as you die, and I'll cap off quickly on this. I've had conversations with third parties as well who are bringing compendiums or interested in bringing compendiums to Roll20 and to D&D 5e systems. And those same exact conversations happen where it's like, oh, can we just throw this in and then your sheet will take care of it? And those vary even further from the the player's handbook and the standard rules we're using. So it becomes this very ambiguous question. So it's we're thinking on it, trying to figure these things out, but the amount of thinking and figuring out to do versus our other priorities to get done right now falls after.
Right. So I'm gonna switch over to some questions from chat. In the meantime, Carlos is trying to evolve into Kenton Hansen product director, but I'm actually smashing B. I'm not ready for you to take your final form, Carlos.
Yeah, that's my final form, just Kenton. It says I get taller and
and more bearded.
Yeah, more bearded.
So the first question I had from chat was from Rodrigo Bortolon, who had some connection problems yesterday. They didn't give a time zone, but from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. and was wondering if this is due to the changes being made. I do know that last night, relative to my time zone, the site went down for like less than 15 minutes, and then the marketplace was down for a few more hours after that. And then today, there are still a few search things that are going to be a bit wonky while our database is updating itself. But it really shouldn't affect your connectivity overall. So if that's an ongoing problem,
please bug forum us.
Yeah, exactly.
Many names of Carlos.
Yeah. And let's see, sorry. Will we eventually, if this is from TLC, will we eventually be able to drag and drop feats, racial traits, etc. from the compendium onto the 5e character sheet?
So that relates to everything we were just talking about, that there's some fuzz on feats. The other things I'd say are things that we've got a clearer roadmap on. Feats are something that we're going to have to. I think the thing we're trying to figure out is like, what boxes could we put feats into, and so are we going to put them into boxes of some of them have math, some of them don't have math, and how do we deal with that? And then what happens when you remove a feat from a character? What's the effect it has on the system going forth? So
yeah, all right. And then Thorson72 wants to know, as a game GM, I have access to an integrated search field for the in-game journal. Why do my players not have access to this as well? Currently, I have to search for them and then hit the show players button to find it for them. This would be a solid quality of life improvement. I'm guessing that this would be a popular suggestions forum option if you wanted to put that in. Again, I'm still...
Is there a setting, and I always feel kind of funny asking, is there a setting in game settings to have everything default to show to public?
I don't think it's a question of making everything show. I think it's that they don't have... that the player version of Roll20 doesn't have an actual search bar. If I'm remembering and interpreting that question correctly. It sounds like somebody has an API for it from SHD, but whether or not that gets integrated into everybody's games, I don't know. I would definitely say that adding something to the suggestion form would be great. And if I weren't slamming B on the evolution for Carlos and he were actually Kenton Hansen, this would be Kenton's cue to pop in and talk about the suggestions forum and all of the things that he's doing to improve them.
I think that we've got a question today about that, and that is something, yeah. Is onwards and questions?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get back to them questions then.
And as far as that might even be kind of round up in a bunch of our user experience updates, I feel like, because we have a lot of things we're going to be looking at with user experience soon. Big answer, but something.
Okay, let's see. I pulled up the wrong question here. Let's go. Here we go. Private homebrew compendiums have already been mentioned on the forums multiple times. Can we expect to get it this year? And is there also a chance that we could add translations of the compendium, which is from Andy?
So we've also talked about private compendiums in the past and at conventions and internally, and I think at few small choice moments in text on the internet. Those are not on the 2019 roadmap, but those are things we're still experimenting with first with third parties. So a lot of what I'm doing currently is talking with, educating with, figuring out how it works with different publishers to get their own compendiums on Roll20. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of complexity involved in that because, like we can just do a lot of, cool, you can do what you see is what you get text editor, and that's all it is. But that's helpful, but how helpful is that on Roll20? So every compendium has different data needs and how it interacts with each sheet, and depending on which game system, which sheet you're using, and which authors support these data points, it becomes a pretty large scene to figure out. And so we're still, like on my end at least, going through with third parties right now, we're still finding all these pain points of where publishers who are paying people to be on our compendium system putting these things in are running into. And if they're still running into pain points and we're collecting that and seeing where it is, mm-hmm. Users will have that times
unleash Pandora's box.
Yeah.
I think the short of this may be, Andy, we don't have good news for you yet. Caius, we have good news for you. Seriously though, looking at the questions, it's like we do have official content on the way. To flip back to another element of Andy's question, translations are something that are dependent in large part on what the publisher allows. And
I've had conversations with some publishers on this, and you have to remember that when publishers sell different language versions of their books, they've hired people to write those different translations and sell them as a separate product. And that's where things get tied up and complicated of, sure, like we could hire some translators to do the PHB in Spanish.
Do we have the legal
then we
right
just
to,
broke, and then we get sued.
Right.
So licensing and legalities, hooray. But those are things we're interested in because accessibility overall for as many people to play on the platform together and across boundaries is really one of our top ideals. And we're looking into these things, but it's a process.
I think that there is a fundamental question in the future of the internet about those sorts of things. Those of you following news out of the European Union today know that some really interesting copyright stuff is happening currently in terms of who the burden for keeping things for protecting IP falls upon in a way that raises a whole lot of boundaries and barriers. I think we're going to see a lot of questions in these sorts of areas in the years to come. I would say we continue to try to make everything as easy to use as possible, but we've got to act within the law so that we can be a legal entity and continue to put out a product. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and I know it's going to be frustrating sometimes that we tread so carefully, but we tread carefully because we're a sustainable business. and lawsuits hurt businesses.
Lawsuits make it hard to sustain the business.
Less sustainable.
As you see with many forms of media companies or anyone who offers any form of media.
Well, and
I do think factor.
That is something, even in terms of our decision that we moved into music. Here with recent updates and impending updates with the rest of the bring your own beat stuff, that was something that we went, okay, the legal realities on music now are cleaner than they were when we started. that there has been more progress there in terms of it being a less crummy litigated realm than it was, 6 years ago is really when some of the changes there started. But it was something that we were still hesitant on. And now I think it's at a place where it's something that we can deal with because the case law is clearer, and there are ways to walk forward and not be worried that the RIAA is going to swing in through the through the skylight to get you. So
I still have fear of all that, but
yeah,
just trained to fear.
Less fear, yeah. And
but because sometimes I see questions of, why can't you just recreate this whole service where if we upload a track, everyone can use it? It's like, oh my God, that's not legal still. As far as the rights and how you check that and rights usage, it's
yeah. Let YouTube, which is owned by Google, deal with questions of that scale.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deep on this because we do have a lot more questions coming up.
Yeah, so and it makes me nervous.
And it's making Dean nervous.
I don't get nervous that much. This conversation makes me so nervous.
It's a nervous conversation.
The next set of questions is a perfect set of questions. Caius's question kind of rolled over. Would it be possible to add a compendium for another official game?
Sorry.
No, it's fine. And someone wants an update on Starfinder. They want it so badly that when we asked for their name, they said, when will Starfinder be brought to the store? And then when we asked for their question, they said, can we have an update on Starfinder? And there was actually a question in chat from Indie Blaze about Starfinder support. So we have a lot of interest in Starfinder. Let's start there and then talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Cool. And just to answer the question on other game compendiums, yeah, we're working actively on getting other game compendiums in right now. It's a big push that's going on. As far as Starfinder, really soon. It was actually supposed to be out already. It was supposed to be out, I think,
Starfinder early this month. The Alien Archives.
Starfinder core Alien Archives. I'm talking about core rulebook and integration with Character Monster. And is am I wrong on the question path or?
No, you're right. I just
okay, cool. So yeah, we've been working hard on that, and with any Character Mancer and compendium integration on a new and complex system, it's been taking a little longer than we want because scope creep on everything. We should have got T-shirts. Roll20 scope creep. But no, it's we are in the final stages, and final stages. I mean, final. The final blockers that we believe are the final blockers are being worked on.
Right.
So that is coming soon, and we will have more Starfinder support soon.
Yeah. Trivia was in here earlier. I think they were expressing their appreciation for you, Dean, and trying not to stuff everything down production team's throat all at once.
I always feel like they're frustrated with me on that. Cool. I'm glad Trivia was happy.
Well, maybe they're just pretending for the audience. But will we see a launch day release on Roll20 for Pathfinder 2nd Edition and updates to match the game sheets? I know you have some big plans for that, Dean.
Yeah, the answer is yes. So we're already working. We're already working on that, and the Pathfinder playtest, as most people know, had been supported on Roll20 up until pretty much its final stages. And that's evolving now into the Pathfinder 2nd Edition character sheet, which we began work very recently on that. And we have big production and dev blocks of time blocked out for Pathfinder 2nd Edition day one. I believe we will hit our targets. So the plan is to hit all the targets and have an amazing launch together. It's a great opportunity for us with Paizo because we only signed our deal in the past year or so. I think we just had our about 1 year anniversary this past month. And up to this point, it's felt a little bit like a game of catch up. But so I'm really excited that we can, from day one, support a system and grow with it every step of the way instead of just scrambling to keep up. So yeah, Long way of saying yes and yes. And yes.
Yes, day one release, day one support for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We are on it. I'm going to switch back to some chat questions now. And chat, I'm going to poke you to try and come up with some questions for Carlos so he can actually be Carlos.
No, it's okay. I'm learning so much, guys.
No, put him on the spot, everyone. Ask him questions about Twitch and Jace
Everyone
Bellerin
else
and
said-
how he must die, or
Yeah.
about the Roll20 rundown that he's been doing lately. SHD is aware that you like whispering, Carlos /
I love
Kenton.
whispering. It's my favorite. That's a reference to video.
I've seen that video, but still, that was,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
Out of context. So Jatan WM asks, are there any plans for a downloadable application?
So no is the answer on PC. At the same time, though, and I think this is also a question that we got in pre-submission that I think we're taking today. We are actually working on the first truly native version of an iPad application. So as opposed to what we've done previously with Trigger.io, which kind of fakes JavaScript into that format. We're rebuilding from the ground up there. There's not a timeline on that, but hires have been made and movement is happening there. So that's a pretty big change that's coming soon. TM, but still no plans on a standalone download application. We're still committed to and pretty pleased with the online web-based format that we really do think it's easy to get into. There are challenges in terms of staying up to date with browsers, but at the same time, there are a lot of benefits in terms of how quick and simple it is to get folks into the program and going. And I think that's a lot of what our focus is for the foreseeable future.
And Saragon asks, on a scale of from maybe to never, when could I get the API to talk to external endpoints?
That's a good question. Maybe is the right point of that scale.
I mean, how many points on a scale are between maybe and never? Never, or
is that we continue to fiddle with API for external endpoints as a conversation with things we'd like to do with Twitch down the road, because I think there's a lot that you can do there that would make for interesting viewing, and things that we have done there before. There's been a few points where JP's group with Roleplay has done things that we've provided a different API there to do some experimenting. Releasing it to everyone has a little bit more hair on the ball, but that's something that we're talking about and something that we want to move on. So that is a strong maybe, and a not a never. So
cool. Nevin has just pointed out that I am the only one who's not wearing a hat, and since I don't have a hat with me,
I came in with very anime hair and decided that no.
Well, now you're the only one without a hat, loser. Okay, and then there's also a question. I'm going to go ahead and throw this to Carlos, because referencing the last rundown, you weren't allowed to talk about it when you recorded it, Carlos, but we're adding more layers for GMs now, aren't we?
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, it's really funny because I was just on Twitter like 5 seconds ago before we started, and someone posted their layers that they're selling like on the marketplace, and it looks so freaking good. Like it was rain, but not only just like rain across the screen, but rain going down visually. So it makes you look like you're looking from a bird's eye view. I was just so impressed and so excited.
Like you're literally crying onto a map.
Yeah, like when you're home crying on your maps, you can now
every
have
night.
that function. Yeah, I don't know why we made that at the top of our list for 2019, but you guys have it, okay?
Because that's how I want my players to feel.
Yeah, I just want them to cry.
I need to simulate the in-person experience of their tears.
Yeah, the weather effects look great. I don't know. I wasn't allowed to talk about it when I was making that video, but we move so quickly sometimes that like, oh yeah, now we can talk about it a week later.
Yeah, it's great. And we're very excited for it. It's going to be called Layer Up, and we'll keep you all posted about that as it develops. Then Dean, I don't know if you want to jump on this one, but I'm going to call them King.
When you preempt it like that, I get nervous.
Everything makes you nervous, apparently.
I just know. I feel Dean is picked on here.
Chocolate chai and
I want that.
Oh, that's what Dean.
Get over the cold.
Chocolate.
Yeah. All right, question.
Okay,
all
right. I'm going to call this person King2345 because I cannot read their name any other way. Any possibility of lowering the prices of the digital books for D&D?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that right now.
That's an excellent answer.
Yeah. All right. No comment.
We're not going to talk about that right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to talk. We should all not going to talk about that.
So then let's go back to the pre-planned questions.
Just next question.
I'm sorry, Dean. I love you.
No, that's a good.
That's okay.
That's a good question and a good answer.
From Adam Karaman, is there any focus on improving the overall performance of Roll20 lag issues, for example?
Yes, and this is all we have.
Oh yeah, we have
same question from Bruce. And a tangent from Steve. Performance is something we're really conscious of, and we keep a measurement on. I think one of the things that can be difficult about this at times is like if the indicators show that Roll20 is working at its fastest, we need help in tracking down the edge cases where that is not happening for you. I think a really great example of this would even be things like frame rate with the recent updates to Advanced Fog of War. There is, I don't think it's published yet. It's not published yet. There's an interview that's coming down the pipeline that shows the change. So we made a performance change there that gets most things performing with dynamic or with Advanced Fog of War at 60 frames per second. We move something like an additional 20 to 30% of users from a range of less than 60 frames per second into a 55 to 60 frames per second realm, which is a major change, like a really big win in terms of just like group assistance to things. At the same time, there are still people who are outside of that range, and we need information that's going to help us fix that. And in those updates, we broke some stuff it's like the frame rate is better, but it's not performing. The behavior isn't working the way that it's expected to. Mm-hmm. And so those are elements where we need help in tracking those down and getting those hammered out. And it's something where you're reporting those things to us and giving us console logs to work from and stuff like that helps us find the outliers and helps us find the things that aren't functioning there. As far as just performance updates going forward, we've got several things on the roadmap this year that are specifically tied towards the way things load into Roll20 that are going to make major changes, I think, to just how performant we are, and take care of some of the things that were never intended as far as like our scope for how much data is somebody going to try to fit into a single game. Our imaginations were puny in comparison to what the realities have become there, and we've got some solutions for that, or at least some better tracking towards that. And those are things that are on a roadmap for this year that there is a plan to get into. And today's marketplace update, this morning's downtime, is related to some elements in that realm that fix that. To keep rambling in this realm, Steve H's question, as far as the WebRTC update, I did want to inquire or put out there. I'm curious that if there's some confusion there in terms of WebRTC being web real-time communication, WebGL being a lot of the stuff that is the web graphics library. We've had updates in both areas recently. As far as I know, everything with WebRTC has been better, except that we have downgraded that video slightly, and that is intentional, and that is something that has given us better connectivity there and allowed us to reduce the load on individual users so that we can get a better video product for everybody there. So we did lower some power there intentionally to make that something that is better. As far as the WebGL stuff, again, the most recent updates there to Advanced Fog of War in terms of fixing that up and adding animations, there have been unintended breaks there that we're still tracking down some of, and there are some fixes for that going out ahead of Layer Up. And there have been multiple fixes between the end of January and now in regards to that. Stay tuned and keep us in the loop as far as what you're seeing so that we can keep on it. But I mean, performance is something like, we don't have a product if it doesn't work. And so I think that there's sometimes myth that new features means that old features aren't being looked at or addressed. And that's not the case. It's a balance thereof. So
yeah, one of the things that I've noticed and enjoyed of seeing the reports and comments from the development team as I do is how often they're talking about like, okay, as we go this, it's going to touch onto this system and that'll give us an opportunity to improve this thing that will make things go faster all around.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in because you touched upon it briefly, Nolan, but a lot of the products that we offer on the marketplace as well, a lot of times the more content you have in a game, which a lot of marketplace products do have a lot of content, there's a lot loading that may not necessarily need to load. And so there's some pretty wild ideas that are taking shape and being planned out on how to address some of that too. So if you buy the biggest possible module on the platform, the performance doesn't hit you near as much as it does now.
Yeah.
So there, and again, we do have multiple pieces that are focused in on changing performance, or even just changing. One of the things that has been partially done with the WebGL stuff that we've been doing over the past 6 months is we're adding the ability to bring in different code libraries. That we're specifically changing where rendering happens and what we're using to do it, so that we can take advantage of new technologies and better technologies to try to take off some of the rust. I'm not convinced that process is ever going to be perfect, but I think that we can make better and rapidly, in so much as we've got folks that are helping us out with edge cases.
Yeah.
And that is something that our QA processes continue to get better as we learn more with everything we do. But there does come a point where rubber hits the road and things that were not, that almost cannot be accounted for ahead of time pop up. Or even, I'll say I think one of the funniest things in the recent updates with rendering, we changed Tyler, who was heading up processes there, changed the way that token bars worked, that they no longer went out over, because he was like, oh, this is a bug.
Right.
They shouldn't go out over.
And it caused a cascade of other things. I'll be really looking forward to that interview with Tyler coming out.
Within that too, I think that that's something that people were used to the way that performed, and they wanted it to perform that way. And there's an element to which I agree with the end user that goes, "Hey, I was using that," and that's something that I've become accustomed to. But at the same time, for Tyler and his approach to how it functions, going, well, if I am trying to measure where the pixels are on a screen in a particular way that needs to be interacted with for rendering, having them interact in past where we told them to render is not right. And so we have to preserve the functionality of this goes past where it looks like it's supposed to go past, but doesn't actually go past where it's supposed to go past, which is a terrible conflict of.
All right, so let's move on to some next questions.
And when I stay the whole time on performance?
No, I think it's really interesting.
It is important to talk about, and I'm glad that we can talk about it in the depth that we do. And so I'm guessing that this is my cluster of questions about suggestions. Feel free to role play as Kent and Carlos, but I'm going to direct. I will not ambush you. I am going to direct the bulk of this towards Nolan. When is Roll20 likely to have a better error reporting and tracking method than forum posts? From Keith Curtis. And Mike wants to know about implementing low-hanging fruit and using an out-of-the-box professional application.
So to Keith's question, we're doing a bunch there. One of the things that is happening is that we are looking at doing a switch to Jira Service Desk and bug tracking directly within Jira. And that's something I had a brief conversation about that on the forums within the past month within the Advanced Fog of War bug tracking thread. It's something we want to do. I think that we'll still have some form of bug forum that exists, not as a, hey, here's where to put your bugs, but a group troubleshooting forum. But we want better tracking there. And we've made some quality assurance hires, and they're helping us set up systems there that I think are going to be effective going forward and faster going forward. And I know you from the moderator end have seen some of the background there. And there are some things that we can really improve overall to make that a better setup. And I think we're getting close. A goal of mine does remain deprecating parts of the forums that aren't efficient, right? That aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And I think in that regard, there's a lot to deprecate in the way that the current bug forum is functioning. That we could more effectively escalate things and just help people troubleshoot faster. I think that sometimes it's very quick to, this is a bug, and it's like, is that a something that's supported? Is it something that we're trying to do? Like, is that actually a feature? And so I think that there are some changes that we're going to be able to make there with a true help desk that should assist in that realm.
Yeah, and we're also, I know that Kenton is always researching applications and stuff that we can use. So if there's one that you think works particularly well, then by all means send team at Roll20 an email and say, hey, send this to Kenton. I like it a lot.
I think the decision on this one has been mostly made, though. That as Jira is a lot of Atlassian Suite is a lot of what we use behind the scenes. We're going to use, we're building out from their realm. And Stephanie, who Carlos was supposed to be at one point today, is working too in terms of bringing some of the things that exist on our wiki over into that help service element.
Yeah. And as for low-hanging fruit, I'm going to move that question forward with us because I'm pretty sure that there's something coming up about a piece of low-hanging fruit that we did manage to grab.
The other question, as far as an application for the suggestions forum, not at this time. We're really pleased with what the results look like on Kenton's first pass on the suggestions forum. Mm-hmm. That really is giving more feedback clearly, and also helping encourage people to cycle back through and use their votes. So
yeah, and for anyone who's not aware, there is a big suggestions forum update this past, what was it, a month ago almost now, or past month?
Yep. And so you should have refunded votes on things that didn't get past the threshold of, I think it was 10 votes.
Right.
So
yeah, it refunds votes periodically, and you also accrue votes over time, whether you're a free user, plus user, or pro user. You do accrue votes over time. You get more votes as a subscriber, but you still get votes either way.
Yeah, and when a suggestion gets implemented, you get your votes back, right? The same as if it gets blocked.
Yes, there's something in that realm.
Yeah. So moving this forward to the next set of questions, and then I see I have a bunch from chat, so I will return to you in a moment, chat. Would it be possible to add a round tracker on the initiative tracker is one of the questions.
We're looking at that. It's a noted possibility, and it's something that we're looking at overall with some UI changes inside Roll20.
Cool. Are we also looking at getting a tool to make lines with 90-degree turns? That's a question from JVMMs.
Yes. We are planning on adding several new tools to drawing and dynamic lighting layers later this year.
Okay, then that probably addresses Berang's question as well, of wondering if we can get walls with built-in dynamic lighting lines. That sounds like maybe a bit more complicated, but an area we're looking at.
It is more complicated because it's like using computer vision to do these things automatically, and computers can be dumb. So we not yet, I think, is an answer on that. But we're doing a lot with dynamic lighting this year, and just general rendering in the tabletop in general.
Cool. All right, let's go hop on some questions from chat. Chubby Kobold Gaming wants to know, they would gladly pay more for additional storage. Will Roll20 allow this in the future?
We're not looking at doing any a la carte storage elements right now. There was definitely a conversation that we were having going into the My Audio update and into the Get a New Look stuff. But as we sat down and we moved things around, what we came up with was expanding the existing storage for subscribers, and we feel pretty good about where that's set. So I'd say that conversation is tabled for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
But that was something that we dove in on and did some hey, what would the business model on this look like?
Yeah.
And went dug it through the center of the earth and came out the other side, it felt like.
Yeah, and that ties into our earlier comments on tracking data usage, with every passing month, and then seeing what the usage is and where people are at. But yeah, the hefty increase, I think it will be a bit of time before that's really a major issue.
Mm-hmm. TLC is digging deep and asking, is there a world where pro users could gain logic in macros? Is there a technical reason why we can't do more as pro users with macros as opposed to having to use the API, like a check for pro users to enable some more sophisticated macro usage?
I think that's at this point a build decision that I'm not certain that we're looking to go back on. That the logic requires some different computing, and so we've put it in a different place. Mm-hmm. That might be something that we look at over time if we're. Yeah, I'm not fully ready to jump into that, and I would want some other smarter technical folks than me who's faking it till I make it here to help through it. But I understand why we made the decision that we initially did there in terms of moving logic stuff to the API and having it specifically there because of what that ends up being tax-wise on computing. I don't know the last time that we've sat down, though. I am unaware of the last time that somebody on the dev team sat down and looked at that as a problem. Mm-hmm. That's something I'll put on my own notes to take out of this.
Cool. SHD wants to know, with Jira Help Desk, will there still be public visibility of the bugs that people are having?
Likely. There's several different solutions that can happen there. That's a possibility. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things on this is that I'm going to let our new folks in quality assurance sit down and make some of those first round decisions on how they want that to function. Mm-hmm. But it is definitely helpful to us if you can publicly see a bug. That way we don't get 300 separate applications of it. Mm-hmm. And so I would say we are incentivized to go in that direction unless we've got a system behind the scenes that sorts that really well.
Okay. I'm going to link together a question from Batetsuo and the Dawn Seeker. Are we going to get some better drawing tools? For Dawn Seeker, they want the ability to draw circles from a center point rather than a corner. And Batetsuo wants to know about a dynamic lighting eraser tool. Are we taking a look at the drawing tools?
Yeah, drawing tools are going to be looked at. There are some. We've had some conversations about what the limitations are on erasing and why that would be an issue with some of the vector things that are going on within Roll20. What was the other side of that?
Dynamic lighting eraser tool.
The eraser tool is what I was talking about. What was the other?
Oh, sorry. The other one was
round tool from center.
Round.
Thank you.
Yeah, round is awful from a rendering standpoint, but there are some things with if we do some of the library switches that we're looking at that we might be able to do. One of the things that we're looking at is even like switching some of the processing off of server side and to client side with dynamic lighting and some other things, and that all goes into differences between Canvas and WebGL and how how those libraries are built and what they can do and what the advantages, disadvantages are of processing. For some insight on the behind the scenes decision making there, please keep a lookout for an interview with Tyler that's going to be coming to the blog probably.
And just one quick tip too, when you're dealing with dynamic lighting, don't use circles.
As it exists right now, yeah.
It takes a lot more processing to light around a full, like that's a lot of points of whatever the term is. So even in our official modules, we never use circles for dynamic lighting, and we also always kind of try to break up our lighting lines in case you have to delete a section. You don't have to delete the entire map. So those are just best use cases for the time being, at least.
And these are all things that are being, I mean, there's really some fundamental changes that are happening behind the scenes with how we're approaching dynamic lighting and what we're doing with that. And literally, we just did an internal, for public consumption talk about what we're doing in some of these areas, and we'll have that posted here pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm going to put us back onto the track of the questions that we got from the forums, but I'm pulling a question from David LaSalle with me about, David's going to want to know about transmogrifying changes, but also about adding folders. And from what I recall, adding folders is coming up pretty soon, actually. No? Maybe I'm not getting the right layer to work. I could have sworn there was a question about getting folders added, but this is actually my last page of questions. So hold that thought, David. In the meantime, I want to jump on some stuff about tablet use from Anion D and Jay Caster. Is there any chance that you can add shortcuts for tablet use, and will the tablet app be updated to support full play at some point?
So, as I said earlier, we're making the first actual native app for iPad right now for Roll20. As far as what the feature set is going to be for that and what its focus is on, we're in the midst of meetings on that currently. And there's some back and forth on to what degree are we going to try to get the full tabletop to run on it versus to what degree do we want it to be the things that you would typically hold. Your character sheet, dice rolling, and chat as being the primary functions. Even within that conversation, we're literally sitting down, pulling numbers on use within Roll20, and it's kind of alarming the amount of people that only use Roll20 for chat, dice rolling, and character sheets, and don't use the map surface at all. And so that kind of points to in a streamlined version of things what's important, and that might be the route that we go. That isn't fully decided yet, but but there's going to be a change to tablet work with Roll20 and hopefully mobile overall in the coming year.
All right, then I will go right on back to that question from David LaSalle. It's about transmogrifier changes in general, and also sorting and adding folders for organization.
So yeah, the organizations, I don't know where we're at in conversations on that, but I mean, that's something we've all talked about. And I know overall we're going to be looking at a lot of ways to improve your journal in the app overall, and your user. This ties back into user experience as we bring on more user experience experts to look at these things. I don't know where we're at in planning or.
I don't think that's anything that's hit. I know that that's on a pain points list. I don't think it's hit an internal roadmap yet. Is where the transmogrifier element is. I know that there's more that is moved along on page copying and how we expect pages to perform in Roll20, because there's definitely some. Right now it copies just the settings and not all of the actual page, and how that functions is something that we're looking at changing as we change how you interact with pages within the interface. So yeah.
Then we're back to chat, and the last question I saw from chat that we haven't answered was any chance on getting a bool. I'm guessing you mean Boolean. I'm not a coder. I don't know how to pronounce that word, but a Boolean or Boolean on tokens for visibility.
Boolean, so a true false for visibility,
false,
basically.
Yeah. I know what it means, surprisingly, but not how to say it.
Reading.
Like a true false.
I'm a little bit confused as the true false for.
I think they're asking for something that would allow them to set a true false of some sort of, like, true false is this object a token?
It's not GM layer, right?
No.
Is that kind of what they're getting at? No,
not a layer, but a way to
no, not layer, but dropping from GM layer to the standard object layer to hide tokens and having a true false for that, so you don't have to keep jumping between. That's cool. What I'm hearing.
That's a good idea.
Maybe. I don't know if that's the same thing I'm hearing or not.
There's a beautiful thing. Someone has asked a question of Carlos, which I know that there is a good answer to. Carlos, any chance you'll be doing some more interface instructional videos in the future?
Yes. I'm working on instructional videos like right now, actually, which is great for me because I'm seeing parts of the system I didn't know. Like, I'm a total novice. So I'm trying to make them, the scope is so big. Like, at first I was like, oh, I'll do some instructional videos, but the scope is so big that I really have to prep and prepare to do to visually show it quickly and be able to teach people who've never used the system before, that might not, used any type of a system software like this before, how to do it and easily do it and navigate around it. So it does take, I have to map a lot of stuff out. It's like teaching a course, you know what I mean? Like, how can I teach a course, teach it easily, and like divide it up into a bunch of different chapters and sections for it. So yes, the videos are coming. I don't have an exact date.
That'll be fun to look forward to.
Yeah.
Smelly Pickle 3 says if we have time to slip in another question.
It
is that
was that was my grandfather's name. Smelly Pickle.
Very honorable man, your grandfather. Are there any ideas in bringing in other companies besides Wizards to make some maps? They're thinking of Bethesda, Obsidian, Owlcat, Blizzard, etc. for their games.
I think we'll see more map creators, period. And I thought I saw a mention in chat in terms of questions with of having dynamic lighting preset on more maps and things like that. And those are all things that we're looking at. I don't know that those particular names are anybody that we're looking at doing that with, but more and better maps are our future.
Yeah, and we're always looking at that. And again, a lot of things that get in the way are licensing problems on that too, especially when you're dealing, talking about video game companies right now. And sadly, every time I've dealt with that, and obviously can't get into specifics, the deal has kind of fallen apart because of cross-publisher legalities.
We do sit in a very unusual place in terms of what Roll20 is, and we don't fit into the one size fits all licensing deal that most of those companies try to slide across the table.
I've had some major heartbreaks on that. Of like, oh my god, I'm so excited for really? Wait, can a lawyer fix? No. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely have had some vicarious experience of that, where like something was coming that I thought like, oh my gosh, that would be really exciting. Oh, it got bogged down forever.
Yeah. So we're always working on it, and as we as we break out with more publishers and bigger names and even more types of products and types of publishers, like these things keep changing. The things I'm able to license today are much different than the things we were able to license, just 2-3 years ago. As VTTs become more standard in people's minds, and it's being thought about in more business models now. So we're still very much this whole industry is still budding and growing, and it's just starting to take real headspace within some businesses' minds, and that so these doors will open more as we go. Always looking to expand out on these things, but yeah, from the list of things you just said, there's nothing immediate that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to take another swing at trying to answer Lone Dwarf's question, although I feel like it might be a question better approached by a coder.
Yeah, I keep on trying to reread it, and I still don't know exactly what's being asked for in terms of hiding and showing it. Can we get a Boolean to toggle whether or not a token is shown via the API? As far as I know, the decision on putting whether or not it would even be shown to take that to the top of things. Yeah, I think you've got the wrong group today to answer that question. That said, if you throw literally a "do not render this token" toggle, okay. So Jeff, save us.
Yeah,
I think that's a nice way of putting it.
We have the coder in chat.
The way I explained it before, did that sound right to that user of
No,
like
they said
hiding a token?
No, they said we got it totally wrong.
No,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. I'm good at that too.
Yeah, we tried.
Can I answer the wrong version of the question?
Yeah. We can
Solar
definitely-
Swordsman, if you can hop on that in chat for us,
Great.
that would be a good one.
And then I'll just close off with a question from Saragon. How big is the full Roll20 team at current? Used to be itty bitty once upon a time.
I think that full-time people are 22, and then in the contractor realm, it stretches well beyond that. And I would say that 22 number is light. We're about to be, right now, we are hiring for at least 5 positions. That'll be starting up as soon as we get through interview processes. So we're not huge, but the future, there's a lot of hiring in the future. All indicators we have say that we're safe on hiring, and that we are continuing to grow. And so in that regard, we put more resources back in to make the product better.
Right.
So
Lots of growth.
Yay!
And we're adjusting and doing even cooler things.
It's a heck of a process trying to scale as quickly as the community is growing behind the scenes as well, without messing up the sauce completely. So thanks for working with us on that.
Mm-hmm. I love it. The future is pink and 20-sided. Thanks, Nevin. Couldn't agree more.
Brother.
Yeah.
Hi, brother.
All right. I'm going to wrap it up on that nice positive note. Team is growing. We are, and so is the community, and we are happy to do more of these with you, and so happy to answer questions. Hopefully we get to do this again with you all soon, and I'm going to give you some more of that lovely music that you all were enjoying at the beginning. Thanks very much.
Okay.